I'm going to talk about bending strings as a technique that is used on the guitar, but before I get into the actual technique of it, I just feel like I ought to explain just a little bit of background information on the guitar itself and how it's used to normally produce notes. I don't want to get too bogged down with music theory or anything like that, because it can be a little bit off-putting if you just want to do the playing stuff. But one thing that's really important with the guitar is the way that we produce the actual notes. I've talked before about the guitar having frets up and down the neck, and that we use those to put our fingers in certain places to produce notes. The way the guitar is designed, the frets are positioned such that the notes that we play are called chromatic, which means that each note is a semitone apart. That's the theory bit. You don't need to really understand too much more about that, but the key point of that is that we can only normally play the notes that the frets allow us to play. So, for example, I'll start on my high E, my first string, I'll play that open, so I'm going to get an E note there because that's my E string. Now if I want to go higher, I can put my finger on the first fret there, I can get an F, go up again, F sharp, G. So I can get lots of different notes, but they're all chromatic notes. So each one of those notes is determined by the frets on the guitar. So I can't get anything in between of those notes. It's either an E or an F or a G or a B. It's determined by the frets on the guitar. So no matter what I do, I'm limited to having those notes set out in stone for me. If you look at the keyboard on a piano, it's very similar. The notes are laid out in the same way. If you were to play a piano starting at the very, very lowest key and playing every single note, that's the white notes and the black notes in order, that is a chromatic keyboard. So each one goes up half a step at a time. So with that out of the way, the idea of string bending is that we can play a finer difference in the note. So rather than having to go a whole fret or a whole two frets in between the two notes, we can actually produce notes that are in between those. If you think too, when you're tuning your guitar, you're turning your tuning peg to get your string into tune. It doesn't go up a step at a time like the frets on the guitar whilst you're playing. It goes up gradually depending on how much you turn the peg. Bending a string is actually very similar to that, but obviously we're not going up to the tuning pegs and messing about with those whilst we're playing. The technique's in our hand to allow us to do that. It's actually, the concept of it is really simple, does exactly what it says on the tin. We're using our hand to physically bend the string so that, thinking back to our tuning pegs, when we're raising the pitch of the string, let's say we're tuning up, we want the string to be a higher pitch. What are we doing? What's happening when we're turning the peg? We're actually putting more tension on the string. We're making the string tighter, and that raises the pitch of the string to a higher pitch. We can do that by pushing the string up with our finger from a normal fretting position. So if I'm to play, I've been playing this position for a couple of these technique examples, so I'm going to play my 5th fret on my high E string, my first string. That's an A note. You don't need to necessarily remember that, but that is an A. If I want to go up normally using the fretboard, the next note would be an A sharp or a B flat. But the problem I've got, it's not a problem, but the way the instrument's designed is I can't play anything in between those. It's either one or the other. By bending the string, I play the same note and bend the string. Using my fingers, I'm going to push it up. I can gradually get up to the note that I want to finish on. In this case, the A sharp or B flat. You can You can bend more than 1 fret at a time's worth of pitch, but to start off with, obviously a smaller bend's going to be easy to play. So rather than going using the fret to raise the pitch, I can bend the string to get up to the correct pitch. It will take you a little bit of time and practice to get the muscle memory of being able to bend the string the correct amount to the right pitch, because there's no fret there to help you, there's nothing to stop you bending it too far. So it's just a case of doing it until you reach the pitch that you want to get to. In this case, I want to hit that note, so I'm using that as a reference point when I'm practicing. And trying to achieve that note, as well as being a good exercise for your fingers, the actual physical part of this. It also helps, it's a helpful exercise for your hearing and your recognition of tones as well, because what you'll need to do is try and remember that note and remember that in your head, and then start with the fret lower and try and bend up to the note that you've just remembered. If you get too much bend, the note will be too sharp. If you don't bend enough, the note will be too flat. So it's literally just a case of feeling where you get the right point, where the note is the note that you want it to be. Depending on the thickness of the strings on your guitar, because you can get all different gauges of strings on guitars, this will be easier or more difficult. With thinner strings, obviously they're easier to bend because they're thinner, there's not as much resistance on your fingers. With thicker strings, they'll be harder to bend because it's thicker, and it'll be more difficult to actually push it out of the way with your fingers. Just one thing I would mention with the bends is a technique that I almost always use is, so I'm bending, I'm going for my 5th fret. In this case, I'm going to use my first finger, and I want to play up to the note, the next note. If I was to use my first finger alone, just to bend that string, I can do it, okay, but bear in mind, I've played for a little while, I've got some finger strength that perhaps you wouldn't have as a beginner, so it's possible for me to do that, but it's noticeably more difficult for me to do it with just one finger, because I've only got one finger strength pushing that string up. So previously, when I was demonstrating these just in this video, I was using my 3rd finger to bend the note. The reason for doing that is because if I'm using my 3rd finger to bend the note, my other fingers I can put behind that and also use, so there I've got the strength of 3 fingers pushing the string up rather than just one finger. It's not always possible to do that, which is why I said that's why I almost always do that. Certain pieces of music you may have to use 1 or 2 fingers, perhaps you might even have to use a finger you don't want to use, but to begin with I would suggest using your 3rd finger as your fretting finger to practice bends, because it gives you opportunity to put your 1st and 2nd fingers behind that, backing it up, giving you the extra strength to push the string up. And the extra strength will allow you to have more accuracy because you're not straining trying to reach that note. I'm only doing a 1 fret bend there, a single semitone bend there. A lot of bends in playing might be a larger interval than that, so if I wanted to go up rather than from there to there, if I wanted to bend 2 frets, so from there to there, I've obviously got to push the string further up to hit that note, which I've just hit there using my 3 fingers. I'm not going to try it with 1 finger on an acoustic guitar because, to be honest, I would probably struggle to get it in pitch and sounding good. So that's why I'm using those extra fingers to bend it up. When I talk about bending up, normally, and in these examples, I'm pushing the string upwards. So I'm pushing the string from where it normally likes to be up towards the top of the guitar. There's an exception to that. So if you're bending strings on, let's say, your 6th string, your E string, if you want to bend that string, I'll go in the same position, my 5th fret. If I try and bend that upwards, what's going to happen, obviously, I'm going to run out of wood on the fretboard and it's just going to fall off the end and sound terrible. So in that instance, I can't bend up, physically bend up. I have to pull the string down to be able to get the same effect. So to get the next note, I've got to actually pull down to get the same effect. Again, I was using my extra fingers just to back it up to make it easier for me to play to begin with. So have a go at it. It's a little bit of technique and also a little bit of the hearing and recognising the tones as well, so that you know that you're bending to the right place, because the note that you land on wants to be accurate, otherwise it won't sound very good.